don't mind us using individual species as flagships to attract attention. We know that they have the capacity to do that. I mean, I can sell you a sea eagle a lot more easily than I can sell you a woodlouse, and I'm conscious of that. And ultimately, therefore, using them as symbolic or emblematic, totems, if you like, to initiate conservation work is fine. But we've got to realise that, we need at this point to be looking after whole ecosystems, not just single species. When it comes to putting things like sea eagles back into an environment, they are the cherry on the cake. They're the keystone predator in avian terms at the top of that ecosystem. If the cake isn't properly baked, i.e. the rest of the ecosystem hasn't been reconstructed so it can support them, then maybe that's not the right choice at the right time, which is why, again, I am very interested in reintroduction of lynx because of the impact they would have over a broader ecosystem, than I am perhaps interested in the reintroduction of wolves at this point, where it would be so difficult to do, it would be so heavily managed, that I don't think that they would be playing a role as ecosystem engineers, doing their proper job in that landscape. For me, if there's going to be any talk of single species conservation, then it's the beaver, because it isn't single species conservation. You put the beaver back, it radically changes the landscape and leads to a massive increase in biodiversity of fish, invertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, birds. It is a proper ecosystem engineer. So I'll back the beaver, knowing full well that in the back of my mind it's not just about beavers, it's about whole ecosystems. The tardiness and the staggering process that we're going through to reintroduce the beaver in the UK is frankly embarrassing beyond all compare. Most countries in Western Europe have successfully done this, and it's paid dividends for them. The problem that we've had in the UK is a tiny majority of recalcitrant landowners who've bathed in ignorance and as a consequence thwarted our progress, which is really disappointing. It would be easy to point the finger at them and say it's all their fault because they have been ignorant. They've been saying that beavers eat fish and that they're bad for the environment and they do this, that and the other. But ultimately we also have to look at ourselves, because we obviously failed to win their hearts and minds. And if we are going to take people through a transition, in this case in terms of the fauna that lives in our country, by reinstating an extinct species, the beaver, then we need to take everyone on that journey, and we have to be relatively tolerant and patient of the fact that they won't all start the journey or make the same progress at the same rate. And I think that one of the problems with beavers is that it's become very polarised, and there are those who are for and those who are against. And what we always need is a bit more middle ground, where people can develop an understanding, work creatively together, and come to a method of progress which is more acceptable. Education takes time, obviously. Sometimes it takes generational periods to turn over for people to change their minds. We don't have generational periods of time any longer. We need to make dramatic, bold, and definitive differences in our landscape, and we need to do it now. So let's stop talking about reintroducing the beavers. Simply glance over our shoulder to Europe, where it's been enormously beneficial, and just get on with it. I'm interested in the work that is being done at Allerdale. Rewilding, of course, has become very much part of our portfolio of conservation measures that we would like to see more broadly and rapidly implemented to make a more positive and immediate difference. For a long time we've been using a model of nature reserves, which are largely disconnected units of land which we have tried to manage to suit either one or two habitats or, on occasion, one or two species. Rewilding is looking at a more landscape, holistic approach to ecological restoration, repair or reinstatement. So it's something that we have to explore, and we know through the way that it's been done in other parts of the world, indeed as close as Europe, that it pays dividends for both wildlife and for people too. And I know that at Allerdale the project's largely been privately sponsored, which is great, because the conservation NGOs, even the statutory bodies associated with our various governments, are not terribly wealthy at this point in time. So if a private individual or collection of them wants to come together and initiate a project like that, that's brilliant. I mean, I think very much at this stage all of these projects are sort of, pilot projects. and we're learning as we're developing them. But that works in Europe, so it should work here in Scotland and across the UK too. I like the wildlife most that I engage with most frequently because it's part of my community, and I like the idea of being part of a community which is as healthy as it can be at that point in time. So I'm really keen on looking after the wildlife in my garden, and I can make a difference there. I don't need permission. I don't need to ask anyone if I can release beavers in my garden. Unfortunately, my garden's too small to release beavers. I've got to be pragmatic about it. But within reason, I can do what I want there. And that empowers me to make a positive difference. And I think that empowerment is far greater than, planting the wildflowers, feeding the birds, putting up the bat boxes that I do in my garden. What that says to me is that, I can be part of a solution. And when I communicate with others who have also recognised they can be part of a solution, then we get a real synergy, 1 + 1 = 3, and it grows. And that's the sort of things I think that will, and is already, bringing us together when it comes to exercising our democratic right to ask our leaders to make the right decisions and do the right things.